Так. Немножко с задержкой видео идет. У меня появилось всплывающее окно, он меня спрашивает, закрыть сайт. Угу. Так, сейчас я ему пару секунд буквально. Угу. Так. George, hello.
Hello.
I'm very glad to see you today. Now I'm going to turn off the video and to turn off my microphone, only you. And the translation is online on our YouTube channel.
There is translation.
Hmm?
Is there any translation?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. So, where's the audience?
Yes, there is a translation on our YouTube channel, and I will send you the second link.
Ah, so should I switch off this link?
Так, очень плохая связь, вообще не слышно.
How does it work? So should I switch it off and then I turn on, I just follow the next link or what?
Так, Юра, вы меня слышите? Я все время слышу с какой-то задержкой. Звук и оттуда, отсюда, я не понимаю, куда говорить даже.
Your mic is off.
Угу. И там уже идет трансляция, правильно? Хорошо, все, поняла, сейчас, секунду. Okay, George, now I'm going to turn off the video, my video, only you, and the audience is ready. The translation and the recording of this video is online, so you're welcome to start.
Okay. So I just wait, is it? Okay, well. So should I start? Should I start? Should I? Coming? Please tell me. Yes. Am I? So maybe you can start. Okay. So I would like to first of all just check with the translator, whoever that is. Please, translator, are you there? Yes, no, I have no idea if you are listening to me. And there's one thing, no, the webinar is in English. Yeah, I know the webinar is in English, but there'll be translation, right? Anyway, I will start, right? Because that's the thing. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Right. So hopefully you're seeing the screen. Let me know if you don't see my screen. But I will start anyway. Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you. My name is Jorge Gomes. Gomes is my last name, and I work for the Lisbon School of Economics and Management, which is one of the 18 schools of the University of Lisbon, right? Right now, I'm in my office with a beautiful view over the river Tagus, which is the main river that divides the city into two parts in Lisbon. Okay, and it's a great pleasure to be here and you be there. I don't know who you are, and I can't see you. I just hoping that there are some people there. Okay, someone is sending me a message. Everything is okay. Go on speaking. We see you. Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay. So our university, just quick word about first the university and then myself. This university is the University of Lisbon, as I said. It's the biggest university in the country. We are 18 schools altogether, covering everything in science, from engineering to management, from medicine to psychology, and so on and so forth, right? In our case, this school, this particular school, ISEC, which stands for Lisbon School of Economics and Management, we are one of these 18 schools. We are the second largest, right? And we are right in the city center. For those of you who have visited Lisbon, we are just next door to the parliament, the Portuguese parliament, just next door. So right in the center. Our school is accredited by international entities, which you can see on the side, on the right-hand side of your screen. So we are accredited by the major American institution, which is AACSB, and by the British Association of MBAs. Then we've entered the Financial Times this year as well. And now we are looking for the third major association, international accreditation, which is the European accreditation, and that maybe, I think that maybe comes in the next 4 or 5 years. This for management schools is very important because, you know, we are competing for students, we are competing for money, we are competing for resources, we're competing for everything. And once you get these accreditations, we start to be sought by foreign students, by foreign investors, and so on. So it's very important for us, these things. But of course, the most important thing for us is our students, right? And our students is what gives us the, how should I put it, you know, a mark in the market, right? And for that, we need to train our students from the bachelor to the master, PhD, and executive level, right? And as part of that training, of course, we train our students in technical skills, but we also train our students with non-technical skills. Why do we do that? Well, technical skills are extremely important when you start your career, because they, you know, they allow you to perform your work. They allow you to do your job. They allow you to justify your salary. But once you get more experience, once you get higher positions in the hierarchy, well, when you get to these developments in your career, you need something else. And we train our students in that something else. This something else is what we call soft skills, right? Soft skills are human-related skills that allow students and allow our audiences to develop themselves, to develop others, and to develop their organizations. So 20 years ago, we didn't have that understanding. Nowadays, we have that understanding, and therefore, we make sure that we train everybody that comes here in these non-technical skills. Actually, the whole country is very much, well, I wouldn't say the whole country, but you know, most companies, most corporations, most institutions, most universities are really engaged in these non-technical skills. So when Katarina invited me to speak to you, first of all, I would like to thank her for the invitation. I haven't seen her in years. We met maybe, I don't know, years ago, maybe already 10 years ago, I can't remember. I went to Pskov, you know, and I missed the city. I would like to go there, and I will go. But for now, you know, we have to be in lockdown situation, and we have to be here, and you know, we have to, you know, we have to take real care with our teaching. At ISEG, we are now moving into face-to-face teaching, but we are really being very careful. You know, we already had the classes started last week, and we already had cases of students with the COVID-19 virus. And we are adopting a mirror strategy. So half of the students come to class, the other half is attending the class via Teams online. And next week, they reverse. The students that were at home, online, they come to class, and the students that were in class this week, they will stay at home. So with that, we are trying to, you know, we're trying to sustain the level of infection. Although I think in a month time, because the situation is getting really bad, and you know, in a month time, I think we are going to go online as well, all of us. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about this first thing here. The first slide is about self-leadership. So self-leadership is one of these non-technical skills that we've been training students on. And the subtitle is Guiding Yourself to Guide Others, right? The content of my presentation is the following, if the slide helps me out. So first of all, I would like to introduce you to leadership, okay? And talk a little bit about leadership and why does leadership matter in our organizations, and then talk a little bit, explain what leadership stands for, what is leadership according to our understanding, and especially point number 3 is what leadership is not, okay, because there are some misconceptions about leadership that I will bring out to you during my presentation. And then finally, a few notes on leadership and self-leadership. So self-leadership is the final issue here. Now, I had something more practical oriented regarding point number 5, but now I understand that everybody's online, so we won't have this practical exercise. So we go just for my presentation, and then of course we'll have time for some questions. Okay, so bear in mind, leadership is something that we teach our students. We teach executives that come to ISEG, and we have lots of companies, lots of corporations coming here. Leadership is something really widespread in our country, and we, you know, we do our part, developing leaders, developing managers with non-technical skills. So I will be talking a little bit about leadership, and afterwards about self-leadership, which is slightly different from leadership. Okay, so first of all, why is leadership important? Well, you know, leadership is important. That's it. You know, that's the answer. But that's a plain answer, isn't it? But of course, we know that leadership is important for many other reasons. And I'm putting some of the reasons, and I will read them slowly so that the translator can do your job. So first of all, leadership is important because it stimulates action and decision. Leaders are people who bring action and decision to others, right? So that's the first thing. People want to act, people want to behave, and leaders do that. Second one, leaders also bring advice, also bring information. Yeah, they provide this advice and information to people. They provide this advice and information, for example, during the lockdown, during the crisis. I don't know how it went in Russia. I just remember I was in Russia on, I got a message here, see if it's everything okay. Don't worry, yeah, okay, thank you very much, Katrin. Let me tell you my story. I was in Russia on the 15th of March, right? I went to Stavropol. I was delivering a few lessons in Stavropol. We have an agreement with North Caucasus Federal University in Stavropol. So I was in Stavropol until the 14th or 15th of March this year. I took the plane on a Sunday. I think it was the 15th of March. So I came back to Portugal, and after the 15th of March, I just went home and I stayed at home for 3 months. But I still remember I was in transit between Stavropol and Kazan, and then Moscow, and I was really anxious because I was looking for Aeroflot's flights, and they were closing some flights between Russia and Europe. So I was really scared, but fortunately I got here. When I got here, most of the country was already in lockdown. Now, during this lockdown experience that we had, lots of companies didn't stop working. They sent their employees home. They worked at home, home office. But leadership was extremely important during these first 3, 4, 5 months after March, especially in providing information. People were very anxious. People didn't know what was happening. And CEOs, leaders, managers were providing this kind of information to people to reduce their anxiety, to tell them that it was okay to stay at home, how they had to perform work and so on and so forth. So this second thing is extremely important. Then the third one, to motivate people, to illuminate people, to provide light to people, to provide a path to people. Also to guide people, to maintain the focus of people, to maintain the focus on results, to maintain the focus on objectives, to maintain the focus on purpose. To create a vision, to create a strategy, these are the roles of leaders and of managers. But also to coordinate, to organize, leadership is important also because of these reasons. But then you also have other non-managerial reasons. For example, to help to develop other people, right? I mean, it's important. Leaders also help to develop others, to build trust, to stimulate morale. People were losing morale during the lockdown. People were having real problems, because they were really afraid of getting infected or their families getting infected. So from their homes, CEOs, managers were pushing people to work, and assuring them that everything would be okay. And then, of course, you also have to resolve conflicts, to resolve problems, and to strive through crises, which happened during the last months, and etc. Yeah. So leadership is important for all these matters and many more. Altogether, what do we want with these actions? We want performance. We want our companies, our individuals, and our nations. So we want our employees, our corporations, and our countries to perform, to function with success, to work properly. So leadership is extremely important for all these reasons, because it leads to performance. Now, I work in academia. I don't know if people listening to me are working in academia or companies, or a mix of both. But we know that the relationship between leadership and performance is a very strong relationship, okay, in all levels, from the individual to the national level. Okay, a little bit more about leadership. What is leadership? Let me show you a couple of definitions about leadership. And these definitions, I will walk with you with some of these definitions. Some of these definitions are extremely popular. So the first one is quite a long one. It's a process through which one person influences other people. Yeah, namely their perception, interpretation of events, their goals and strategies, organizational working activities, motivation to pursue goals, cooperation relationships, development of their competencies, and cooperation from others outside the group, right? So, but basically the word here is influencing, okay? So it's a process of influencing, one person influencing other people, right? So this is a very good definition. It tells a lot about leadership, but it doesn't tell everything. Let me show you another one which complements the first one. It's a process of giving purpose. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Giving purpose, giving meaning to collective effort and causing willing effort to be expended to achieve purpose. I like this one because leadership is what gives a purpose to people, is what gives a direction. It's what gives meaning, right? And during the last months of the lockdown, everybody was really confused, you know, and it still is very confusing what's going on. But leaders were setting the direction. They were explaining things, and they were assuring people that, you know, everything will be okay. You know, everything will be okay. So this is also interesting definition. Look at the third one, process of knowing yourself. So leadership is also about knowing you, knowing yourself, developing and communicating a vision, promoting trust, and making sure you release your leadership potential. That definition by Bennis is a very interesting one because it tells you that you can be leaders of yourselves and you can release your potential as leaders. Everyone listening to me can be a leader. Everyone can become a leader, okay? That is possible. It has to be trained, but it is possible. And the final two definitions, even shorter definitions. Look at this one. It's like the Yeti. Have you heard about the Yeti? Maybe the translator wants to, you know, explain a little bit about the Yeti, the abominable snowman. Yeah, no one has ever seen the Yeti. We've seen his footprints, but no one has ever seen it. It's like leadership. Leadership cannot be seen, cannot be observed, cannot be tasted. It can only, the only thing that we can observe is its consequences, its impacts on people. That's very interesting definition, isn't it? Leadership is invisible. The only thing that we can that can be visible is the outcomes of leadership. And the final one, even simpler, is a leader is someone who has followers. That's also very interesting. And that means that without followers, we won't have leaders. And that means that we have to pay attention to leaders as much as to followers. Okay, so this, of course, there's plenty more that I could talk about. You know, I mean, we could have a talk of 2 or 3 hours here and talk a lot about leadership. But I think you got the point here regarding what leadership. Again, I'm not sure who's listening to me, and I'll be glad to see your faces afterwards. But for now, these are the definitions that I would like to share with you. Okay. Now, even more interesting, what leadership is not. Just let me drink a little bit of water, please. Thank you. Okay. What leadership is not. Right. That might sound like a weird question. And maybe it is a weird question, but the reason why I'm bringing this slide here is that we tend to think about leadership as something that is unique, something that is very powerful, something that is embedded in one person, which is the leader. And usually it's a male figure. Yeah, it's a heroic figure. It's a linear person. But this actually is Western society thinking, right? Let me show you what I meant here. In Western societies, leadership is seen as something which is belonging to a person, which is the leader. And this is usually a male figure. It's a heroic and linear person. These leaders are seen as the main cause determining performance. Other causes are usually disregarded, as well as interactions between the causes. So what this means is that we tend to think that leaders are the strongest, if not the unique cause of outcomes. So if a corporation goes down, if it fails, if it gets bankruptcy, that was because of his CEO and his team. And if the corporation has success, it's also because of his CEO and its team. This is not correct. This is simple thinking, right? But that is what the Western society and the Western thinking and the Western management has taught us. The last 100 years, we were taught to think of leadership as something that is in a person. Yeah? In this modern cultural mindset, leaders are seen as powerful entities, almost magic, that make the difference. Okay, now I think this is novel thinking for some of you out there. But but give it 1 minute of your thought. Just think for 1 second. Isn't this true? Don't we tend to think about our leaders as the main, most important elements in a complex world, in a complex system, in a complex corporation? Don't we forget that apart from the leaders, we also have structures. We have a culture, we have a system, we have followers, we have clients, we have customers, we have etc., etc., etc. All of those elements, they also exert a huge impact, huge influence on our corporations, on the individuals, on outcomes, on performance. But we tend to forget that. It's very easy for us to point our finger at one person and say, you are the leader, so you are responsible. Actually, we are all responsible. Okay? And the most, again, I keep coming back to the pandemic. The pandemic, yeah? No leader in the world back in December 2019 was able to forecast or even understand what was coming. And look at what happened now. Leaders and followers alike, clients and suppliers alike, customers, competitors, everyone went into lockdown because of a single tiny microorganism that no one sees, no one smells, and this small microorganism has put humankind on its knees, right? What was the action? What was the influence of leaders there? Minor, wasn't it? So what leadership is not is something that is invested in one single person. Although, of course, we need to acknowledge here that some leaders do have an influence, a strong influence, but more oftentimes leadership is something more complex than what I just presented you in the slide just before this one. So, in fact, phenomena, are highly complex with multiple interacting causes, where every person has its role. including leaders, of course. So if the corporation goes down, you are also responsible as employees. Of course, not as much as your leaders, but you were, partly responsible for that. Leadership can be exerted by systems, structures, and other social entities which have no visible bodies, no gender, are non-linear, and are far from heroic or fair. Some of our systems are not fair, and nevertheless, they are leading us, they are influencing us. Leaders can make a difference, but often they do not, or it is a marginal difference. Let me tell you something that I'm doing right now as a research, and I'm doing this research with a few colleagues. We are looking at leadership from a different, from a different angle. And we are taking some examples from Africa, in some African countries, and in some countries in the Pacific Ocean and in the Americas. We still have these tribes, and these tribes, ancient tribes, they have different ways of leading people. And it came to my mind, it came to my knowledge, one particular tribe in the northern part of the United States, southern part of Canada, which is the Blackfoot. Yeah? The Blackfoot, they are like Indians, right? And when the British conquerors went into America, they started contacting several of these Indian tribes, right? Like the Sioux and the Apache. Well, the Blackfoot, when they started contacting the Blackfoot, the British were really puzzled at the way the tribe was behaving. So imagine, first day, the British would contact the leader, and the leader would have full responsibility for speaking and taking action and decision, right? And negotiating with the Brits. But on the second day, a different person would come from the Blackfoot, and a different person. But interestingly, that person would have, again, full power to take decisions and speak for the group and, and negotiate with the Brits. And on the third day, a third person would come with the same level of responsibility and so on. And the Brits were really surprised. They couldn't point to a person who was the leader. Actually, leadership was shared leadership. So leadership was shared amongst everybody. And this shared leadership is something that we are now trying to understand and try to see if we can apply that model of leadership to modern organizations. Because it's really interesting if you look at shared leadership. And I will show you an example from the animal world shortly. Anyway, let me move on. I'm just taking a lot of time. So Western societies, we kind of romanticize. We have this romantic vision about leaders, which is not totally true, is not totally right. So we need to advance our knowledge on leadership. Okay. Random notes on leadership before we move on to self-leadership. So random notes on leadership. I'm giving you three things that you can easily find in internet, and you can improve your knowledge on these things. The last one, the Harvard Business Review, that's from spring 2020, this year. How to lead with purpose. It's I think you can find the special issue still in the internet, but that's a very interesting special issue from HBR. And it's basically, it teaches you, and explains how we can lead with purpose. Purpose is something that is really important nowadays here, and in the Americas as well, in the US, we are talking about purpose and how to give purpose to people, how to give purpose to our organizations, and how to lead with purpose. So if you have the time, just go fetch this Harvard Business Review special issue and read a little bit more about how to lead with purpose. The two other ones are, one is a book by Jorge F.S, And the one on the left-hand side of my slide is a pack of geese. Now I will start with this pack of geese. You know geese, yeah? Geese are birds that fly over the skies on a V formation, right? And we can learn a lot about leadership from the animal kingdom, especially from geese and from ants, from wolves. You know, we can learn from the animal world how they lead, you know, individuals. Anyway, about the geese, there would be 3 or 4 characteristics that we can observe in the flight of the geese, which, you know, if we were more perfect, we would import those characteristics into our organizations, and I think we would improve our organizations. Let me tell you about these characteristics. First of all, if you look at the V formation, you know why they fly on a V formation. Engineers, if you got engineers out there listening to me, you understand, you know, you would be able to understand it. Well, and the other ones as well. When you fly on a V formation, the goose in front of you creates a vacuum, creates an empty air area. And by doing so, the goose coming after, he or she finds less air resistance, right? And that means less effort to fly. And that geese is also creating an emptiness behind it. So the third goose also finds, you know, less air resistance, and so on and so forth. So flying on a V formation gives every single individual an opportunity to spend less effort. They have calculated 30% less effort if you fly on a V formation, right? And the same happens when you're driving, you know, in Formula One, when you look at 2 cars and the second car is going close, you know, very close to the first car, and because it goes really quickly, you know, and very rapidly, and it's taking advantage of that vacuum. And that vacuum, of course, is less air resistance. So it's a V formation. Now, it would be very interesting if our organizations could fly on a V formation. They don't fly. Our organizations do not fly on a V formation, do they? I mean, everyone in our organizations fly, you know, its own direction. But if we had one corporation where everybody was rowing towards the same direction, if everyone was flying into the same direction, that would create less air resistance. But instead, we have people going everywhere and creating lots of resistance and creating lots of problems. Second characteristic. The guy in front of the geese is the only one that doesn't make any sound. You know, he's not horning. The other ones behind it are horning, you know, quack, quack, quack. But the first one doesn't do it. It's silent. Now, this is really interesting, I think, because the guys that go behind the first goose, by doing this quacking, you know, and horning, they are actually motivating the first goose. The first goose is just flying, but the other ones are motivating him. And that's also interesting. That means that followers can be motivators. Followers can motivate the leader. Do we have that in our corporations? Not very frequently. Sometimes we have followers that actually, you know, put you down. You know, they just push you down, yeah, and they don't help you to fly. They just help you to, you know, to destroy things. And the third characteristic is the guy in front. After a while, he goes to second or third place, and the guy in the second place takes over and becomes the leader. Yeah. So the guy that goes in second, when he becomes the leader, he stops horning and he just is flying. And the guy that was in the leadership position earlier on, When he goes to the second or third or fourth position, he starts horning, and he's no longer the leader. That's also very interesting. And that tells us about, again, shared leadership. Yeah, geese share leadership amongst them. And that's very interesting because our organizations don't do it. But once you share leadership, you as a leader understand the problems of your followers, and the followers understand the problems of the leaders. The problems are different, but because we don't share different positions, we are not able to understand what others are facing and what are the shortcomings of what others are facing. Okay, so you might, yeah, and there are other characteristics, but we don't have time. You might think, okay, but that's not possible with human corporations. Well, maybe you're right. Maybe we cannot import these characteristics into human organizations, but maybe we can, adapting them, and in the process, getting better organizations in terms of leadership. Anyway, and to finish, the Jorge F.S. book, Leadership BS. I don't know if you understand what BS stand for. It can be, you know, it can be something positive, but it can also be bullshit. And I'm sorry if you are recording this, but you know, Pfeffer is not very clear what he means by leadership BS. But what the book says is that sometimes leaders are people that are highly toxic, people that are really nasty people. They are obsessive people. They are harmful people. They are, you know, they are narcissistic people, but they are leaders, right? And sometimes these leaders are also very successful. Sometimes this kind of leadership is also very successful. So Pfeffer shocks us by telling us that sometimes negative leadership can lead to success. Of course, it can lead to success to a certain point. Eventually, it won't work, or maybe sometimes it works for a long time. Yeah. So again, we have this romantic view of leadership that, you know, leaders are positive people, you know, and everything is nice and beautiful around leaders. And sometimes Pfeffer says, no, it doesn't work like that. Okay, sometimes leaders are negative people, toxic people, and they are still there, you know, haunting us just in their positions, and they are destroying their corporations, they are destroying their environments, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Right. Next one and final one is self-leadership. So we've come to now look at self-leadership. What is self-leadership? Well, now that I've talked a little bit about leadership, it's easy to understand what self-leadership is. Self-leadership is about leading yourself, right? It's about influencing yourself. Some people say that you cannot become a good leader if you're not able, first of all, to lead yourself and to understand yourself, to realize what are your advantages, your strengths and weaknesses, and, you know, and to understand what are your skills, etc., etc. I have a message here. You are streaming online this lecture at our YouTube channel. I will bring the questions here. The lecture is being recorded. I will send you the link afterwards. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so this is about leading yourself. Of course, once you learn how to lead yourself better, you can lead others, and then you can lead leaders, you can lead the organization, and you can lead strategy. Here's a definition for you. And by the way, I'll be happy to send the audience my slides, so you know, so that you can have my slides. Anyway, where is it? This is a plain definition. By the way, self-leadership is something relatively new. You know, we started looking at self-leadership in the last 15, 20 years, right? Although if we go back even more, we could see already some people working in self-leadership. Anyway, Kazan, yeah, the name of the city, of your city. Anyway, but this is a person having a developed sense of who you are. Yeah? what you can do, where you're doing where you are going, coupled with the ability to influence your communication, emotions, and behavior on the way to getting there. Okay? So you see, having a developed sense of who you are, and that means self-knowledge, right? Self-recognizing, self-recognition. What you can do, so a sense of your skills, where you're going, so a purpose, goals, objectives, coupled with the ability, so the capacity to influence your own communication and your emotions. Maybe some of you have heard about emotional intelligence. We also work out emotional intelligence in our students, and behavior on the way to getting there. Okay, so again, this is a managerial perspective of self-leadership. Yeah, so we want to work out self-leadership towards something. Now, these are the 5 pillars of self-leadership. Some of them I've already mentioned to you: self-awareness or self-discovery, self-confidence, self-efficacy, self-regulation or self-growth, and self-management. We work out each of these competencies in our students, right? So we train them, we train our executives. Some corporations come to us and we train these pillars. So we have lots of exercises, lots of training in room. Well, we had that in room. Now doing it online, maybe it's a bit more complicated. Anyway, so that's what we have. Just plain definitions of that. So first one, self-awareness. It's the ability to acknowledge, understand, and be conscious of one's own values, perspectives, strengths, weaknesses, leadership, propensity, and emotional needs. So basically it's about knowing yourself, right? Understanding yourself. What are you good at? What is your leadership potential, and so on. We have lots of instruments, self-diagnosis instruments that we can use to help people to understand themselves. I had an exercise here to you, but I will leave it because we don't have time for that. Okay? Self-confidence, knowing our own strengths and abilities and accepting them. Right? It's amazing. We tend to think that we know ourselves. Most oftentimes we don't. Okay? And it's amazing. It's amazing when we do these exercises. People realize, oh, hang on, I didn't know I was like that. I thought I was like this. Well, that's what you think, because some other people think otherwise. Self-efficacy, it's a belief that whatever comes out, it can be handled. So this is about giving people it's about giving people the capacity to motivate themselves, the capacity to take feedback. Some people are very poor at taking feedback. And feedback is extremely important if you want to get yourself improved, if you want to get yourself developed. If you don't take feedback, how can you, develop yourself? Self-regulation, ability to monitor and control on behavior, emotions, thoughts, altering them, changing them in accordance with the demands of the situation. This is extremely difficult because, it's about yourself becoming like a chameleon, yeah? Changing your stuff, changing yourself to adapt to the situations, okay? Again, several techniques that we can use for that. And finally, self-management, the ability to nurture and harness one's own passion, abilities, emotions, and leadership capacity in decision-making, okay? So it's about managing yourself, right? Now, I'm not saying that people don't have that. People have this. Everybody has this. Everybody has developed these pillars along their life. Everyone out there listening to me, you have that, okay? You have these capacities. But what we do is we expand your knowledge of these capacities. We train you in these abilities. We give you extra competencies to develop these abilities in yourself, okay? And 2 or 3 final notes, and then I will give the floor to questions. This look at 1986 from Mans, the self-influence process through which people can and do achieve the self-direction, self-motivation necessary to perform their tasks and work. Let me just show you these three techniques, these three different strategies. I actually use some of them in my life and some of them in my professional life as well. Behavior-focused strategies. So basically, they help to increase self-awareness in order to facilitate behavior management. For example, self-observation, right? Self-observation is about observing yourself in what you're doing. Sometimes physically observing yourself, sometimes metaphorically observing yourself. And that's really interesting because in the last months, when we went online, here we are using Zoom. At ISEG, we use Teams, which is very similar. But when you're using these platforms, actually, you can see yourself, can't you? You can see yourself. You can see your icon. You can see, your face talking. Well, let me tell you, I've used these online platforms to see, how I behave, how I talk, and I've actually improved a few things, right? But it can also be metaphorically. Yeah, and the exercise that I had here for you today was a metaphoric exercise, but we don't have time for that. Another technique, behavior-focused techniques, self-goal setting, right? So set goals for yourselves and be very, how do I say it? Be very disciplined, pursuing your goals, self-rewarding, etc., etc. You can find a lot more about these strategies in the web, in the internet, but they depend on the situation, right? They depend on your work. So if you're doing some, technical work in a factory, maybe the techniques have to be changed, but they would still be behavior-focused techniques. Second one, natural reward strategies. These are intended to create situations in which a person is motivated or rewarded by aspects of the task. Well, some examples here. These are, first of all, natural reward strategies. The first one involves, for example, building more pleasant and enjoyable features in your activity, right? I mean, look, everyone out there, people are working, in our work, there are things that we like, things that we don't like. Well, what can you do about the things that you don't like? Well, maybe you can add features into those things, into those activities that are more enjoyable, yeah? And by doing that, you are kind of changing the way you're working, giving it a bit more pleasure, right? And by doing that, you're using a natural reward strategy. So this would be a strategy that you could use in your works. And the final one, the third one, is constructive thought pattern strategies. These are designed to facilitate the formation of constructive thought patterns and usual ways of thinking that can positively impact performance. For example, one thing that I use in my work, as you understand, I'm a university professor. I'm also a training consultant. So one of the things that I do very often is presentations, right? So I do presentation. I present, on stage, face-to-face, and more recently online. Now, maybe you don't know, but delivering presentations is a bit of a stressful, it's stressful and anxiety activity. So what I do is I train my presentations before. And actually, I use a technique called mental imagery. Mental imagery is I represent my presentation in my mind before the actual presentation. So I kind of rehearse my presentation, right? And I try to imagine the audience out there. And when I do that, I basically rehearse my presentation, and I create this image of my own doing my presentation. And when I get to the actual presentation, I already had 1 or 2, previous presentations. Of course, these 2 or 3 presentations were from my mental point of view, only from my image, yeah. But when I get there, actually, I've practiced it already. Okay, so, but that's my job, because my job has lots of presentations. I had to create this technique. This technique is a constructive thought pattern strategy. And I'm finishing, about to finish, and I'm just delivering this example of self-leadership. You can find lots of great leaders there. Focus on a worthwhile goal, something that is worth pursuing, and you can see Gandhi. Choose your own identity. You can see Che Guevara there. Che Guevara was, as you know, a medical doctor, and once you get to become a revolutionary man, he had to create this image, and that's the image that we still have. Bourguiba, speak up, live authentically, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, be resilient, stay the course, adapt, things always change. Oh man, they do, and they've changed quite a lot in the last months. Martin Luther King there, and Nelson Mandela. Win the crowd, you're not alone, and live life on purpose. Okay, and that's it. This is the exercise. I will, of course, not have the exercise here if we don't have time, but I'm glad to take your questions, and thank you very much. Spasibo большое. And now, Katarina, I don't know if we have time for questions. Yeah, question. There's a question. Talking about these, as you know, they changed the first one in the formation after some time. Does it mean that corporations need not the only one leader, but a couple of them? I think we are not culturally ready for changing our Western models of leadership yet. I think before we move on into shared leadership, participative leadership, we need to prepare our men and women, right? We need to explain them why shared leadership can be a good thing, right? And we also need to change our systems, because our systems are designed to uniform leadership, which means there's only one leader, and the environment is highly competitive. So if you want to become a leader, you have to, move up the ladder, the hierarchy ladder, and only one guy can get there, or a couple of guys. Having said that, some organizations are already doing this kind of shared leadership. I've got a student, a PhD student from Iran, and so we're talking about the Iranian companies, and he's looking at shared leadership in project management. So if you look at small unities like project management teams, yes, you can have shared leadership. Yeah, you can share responsibilities and you can move around. So the fly of the D's is possible in project management. But if you're talking large corporations with lots of levels, maybe we should be careful and wait until people are ready for that. Another question. Does the ability of leadership depend on the nationality? In your opinion, there is a cultural element in leadership. As I said, shared leadership in these ancient African and South Pacific tribes is something that is culturally rooted. If you put the people in front of the group, the group won't accept it, because they're expecting shared leadership. They're expecting a totally different way of leading, right? So definitely there is a cultural element in leadership. Okay, definitely. And and we need to understand the link between culture and leadership, definitely. But of course, let me give you this example. Even within the same nationality, the Nazi Germany during the 40s, before the 40s actually, when Hitler was ascending to power, shared leadership, leadership was kind of an authoritative model, right? So Germans back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they were totally okay with authoritative leadership. And then the war happened, the Holocaust happened, and you know what happens now? Germans' model of leadership is totally different from before the war. Now they have a model where everybody has to be listened before the decision is taken by the leader. It's a participative model of leadership. If someone is not listening, oh man, that would be chaos, right? And that changed because of the war and because of the destruction of Nazi Germany, right? So even within the same nationality, the leadership model can change over time, right? Okay, another one. For a new company founder or CEO dealing with employees for the first time, should he work on his passiveness or emotional control or self-confidence affirmative skills first? That's a tough question for a new company founder or CEO dealing with employees for the first time. Okay, should he work on his passiveness or emotional control or self-confidence affirmative skills first? Right, now, let me, well, I'm a strong believer in self-confidence, right? I'm a strong believer on the capacity of people to become great people. Even, you know, all employees have this capacity. I'm a strong believer, but I know that I'm not totally right. Some people cannot be developed. Some people don't want to be developed, and some people should not be developed, right? But I would say to this CEO finding a new company, get to know your employees, understand, you know, if they want to be, you know, very autonomous or not, or if they need your guidance. And depending on the level of maturity of your employees, depending on the tasks, maybe you can adapt your style. If your employees are still not very mature, if they are not, and if the task is complex, maybe you can give them guidance, right? And I would say authoritative guidance. But when your employees become more knowledgeable, they know you, they know themselves, they know the group, and they are able to perform their activity alone, then give them, you know, delegate them, delegate your power, delegate decisions, because they are ready to take in. Right? So it depends on a few things. It depends on a few things. Okay, any more questions? Is it enough to guide yourself to be a leader, or are other people crucial to be seen as the one? Yes, definitely. And the exercise that I had here, sometimes, look, sometimes self-leading, you need others to become better leaders. Sorry, you need others. Sometimes you need other people to help you become better leaders of yourselves. Got it? For example, the exercise that I had here was, and that I applied to some audiences that come to Isaac, is you use others to ask them, what do you see? What are the strengths and weaknesses of a third person? A person that you know, a person that you've met. Right? And when you do that, you are able to get from others feedback. And by having this feedback from others, you are able to improve yourself. Okay? So sometimes this mirror exercise is extremely important, because others are telling you on the basis of trust, you know, on the basis of confidence. So everything has to be really relaxed. The others are telling you, you know, what they see in you, and what they can, you know, and what you can improve. Sorry, I need to switch on my computer. Battery is running low. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Is leadership always connected with stress? How to overcome it? Not all the time is connected with stress, but yes, sometimes connected with stress. Sometimes leaders are bringing lots of stress to you. Actually, I have a few stressful leaders, and sometimes I'm really stressing out with my students and with my people that I work with, I must confess. But how to overcome stress? Well, stress is not a negative thing, is it? You know, you can have positive stress, and actually stress is very important for you to move, for you to act. Without stress, life would be, you know, too relaxed. Of course, if you have too much stress, then you have to control it. Yeah. So stress can be, you know, stress in itself is a huge topic. I can speak for an hour about stress, because stress is something that you can work out from the positive point of view and the negative point of view. Of course, if it's negative, you have to control it. But if it's positive, let it go, because it helps you to do things. Okay? So, and this was the last question. Well, if that was the last question, let's finish. I will stop YouTube, okay? And I will stop my conversation. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope to see you one day in person, and all the best to you. Thank you very much.